What's up, everybody? We're back with another podcast here on One-on-One Sports, but it's not quite sports today. We're going to be doing something slightly different, continuing with our movie series, which we will be putting out videos in accompanying it with these podcasts. We're looking at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and today, more specifically, Phase 1. Is that correct?
It is.
So we're going to start out with every movie in chronological order, not of timeline order, but of release order, right?
Yeah.
So first, obviously, we're going to be starting out with the OG, the real ones know this one.
Oh yeah.
The movie that brought Robert Downey Jr. from a failed inspector with the San Francisco Police Department and into a new world, Iron Man.
Yeah. Great movie. Good movie.
Good movie.
Say any movie, I'll tell you.
Spider-Man.
Good movie.
Awesome.
Well, which one? I guess. All of the first Spider-Mans were good, of the first three at least. But anyway.
That wraps up today's podcast. We'll talk to you guys on no, but so just for a little bit of backstory, these are going to be kind of more free-flowing conversations, but we are going to be kind of bringing up some specific points about each one to kind of make it somewhat cohesive. So we have some ideas of, like, we're going to bring up the villains in each movie, the plot lines, things like how do we feel the characters, the main characters, the heroes' powers are displayed, things of that nature, to make it all kind of fit together into one big conversation. But let's just kind of start right there with Iron Man. We talked about this a little bit in the video we recorded about our tier list of all these movies, but I know you feel really like this movie has kind of a special place in your heart just because it was the first one, and I think we both kind of came to the consensus that this kind of was obviously the first movie, but kind of the genesis to the whole superhero universe that Marvel has cultivated over the years.
Yeah, and it really was like the genius of Jon Favreau and just the ability of Robert Downey Jr. to like be Tony Stark and Iron Man. And it's just one of those roles that kind of just fits so well together. You know what I mean? And it just worked out so well for him to be in that, to be able to play that role at that time, like you were saying, kind of having a comeback story, and like his career exploded after that.
Yeah, I like, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but I'm not somebody who checks these things very often, but I did happen to stumble upon an article that showed like the top earners in the film world over the past couple. It's like 60 millies banking per movie
easily.
Or something ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, because on top of, like, from what I've heard, his salary was not only just based on like a certain amount, but he wanted percentages of like the success.
Yeah. Which
is really, really smart. And it's kind of sad that, I don't think everyone got that deal, but anyway, it's just really cool to see him have like such a wonderful life after having kind of such a rough start. So
yeah. And like, we're probably beating up on him a little bit too much. That was like mostly in jest, because he did have like a pretty decent career up to this, but definitely, like, I think people view him in a completely different way post the whole Iron Man series, right?
Yeah.
But so to bring it back to our discussion points a little bit, one of the main things that we like to talk about when it comes to movies, especially obviously comic book movies, is like how does the villain come about? Is the villain something that is scary? Is it a good display of what a villain could be? Do we feel like, I mean, you might be able to touch on this a little bit more. Does it accurately represent what might have been in the comic books? Like our overall thoughts on like the villain. I guess there's a couple in a way in this movie, right?
Yeah.
But the main one being
Ironmonger and Obadiah Stane. I tried to look up like a comprehensive list of all the villains, and like it lists every single person. So we're definitely not going to do that because that would just take forever. And so, but yeah, Obadiah is the main villain of this one. He built this with a box of scraps in a cave.
Tony Stark could build it in a cave
with a mouthful of peanut butter. You got to say that. No, I don't know. For me personally, he's not my favorite villain. I don't always love, okay, well, you're Iron Man. Well, I'm, just like a different version of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Which is funny because the next film we'll talk about that I actually do like Abomination, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know. For a first movie, he does okay. Obviously, like his motivations and like wanting to take over the Stark, industries and like all of that made sense, and it was a great starting point, especially like at the end when they bring in like Nick Fury.
Yeah.
And I really am sad that they weren't able to keep Terrence Howard, I believe is the actor's name, as Iron Patriot / Warhammer.
See, I differ on that. I think he did a fine job, but I think that he was always lacking something.
Oh,
I think
really?
Don Cheadle's done a great job with that character, so like I'm completely fine with that switch.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, because like I think Don Cheadle's a fantastic actor, but
I think to me it comes down to Don Cheadle seems like he has like the confidence and the bravado to be a superhero, whereas Terrence Howard just seemed so like, because the whole time he's kind of just fighting with Tony Stark, of like, I don't want you to do this. Why are you doing this? You're going behind our backs. We're in the air. Like it was that whole thing of like, I couldn't ever see his character coming around and being like, I'm a superhero too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I appreciated his like smoothness as a character. I don't know. I do see what you're saying, that Don Cheadle maybe had more of that like chip on his shoulder that made him a better character, especially like for Iron Man 2, like jumping in like more of that being a dick to Tony at times, because somebody needs to be. So I guess we'll never know, but we'll just move on. So, obviously another point of this movie is like the overall plot. We've kind of already touched on, but
just a quick recap to anybody who might not have seen the movie before.
Is obviously Tony is, big shot, ends up falling on hard times, to say the least, has to create tech to save his own life. And then because of that, I was able to develop, this mega suit. Yeah, in a cave with a box of scraps.
Yes.
And then ends up, kind of saving the world, but being like a, self-contained United Nations meets, the $1 trillion backing of America. So I think that pretty much does it, and then has to overtake his mentor. I
think one plot line that, at least for me, kind of gets missed in this, and it's a very, very small piece of the puzzle, but I think it's important because it gets brought up in further movies, is that like this all started essentially because Tony Stark was in the weapons industry, and once he went over to war and like that first opening scene, truck gets blown up and everything, he decides to change. And that's kind of what starts this whole beefing between him and Obadiah. Yeah.
And like he still maintains who he is, but they're definitely, as we go throughout all of the phases and stuff, that it starts that Tony wants to protect those who he's loved, and in particular he wants to right the destruction that he's caused. I think that
it goes a little bit further from that very start of the movie, Iron Man 1. It's Tony Stark's self-interest at 100, and then as we get to the end of the Marvel series, it's like it starts to come down slightly, right? Like that's the whole progression.
Yeah, it's I don't even know what the line graph is. I can like see it, but it's kind of like exponential growth. But if you like flipped it around, that it just slowly decreases until he ends up being a badass. But
Papa Potts comes around,
convinces him. So I don't know. Rewatchability of this movie, I still enjoy it. Like even to this day, it's still a good movie. And like as somebody who's rewatched a lot of the movies over the years, like it's one that I don't dread going back and having to do. There are some that I kind of maybe pull out my phone a little bit more on, but
the only thing I'll say about this, and this has nothing really to do with rewatchability, but it's just kind of one of those like cliches that's kind of annoying, is the whole like first half of the movie of like the Al-Qaeda style terrorists. Like that's very 2007, 2008. It's like the same thing where like almost every villain from like the 80s to late 90s was Russian. You know what I mean? It's
or
like,
English. Yep.
There's a little bit of that, but it's still, it's a very good movie to rewatch. And I've gone back and rewatched a lot of them recently. while I had my quick bout of COVID, nothing else to do, right? So,
Yeah.
and this is one I didn't watch many of the Marvel Phase Ones just because I had seen them so recently and they're still fresh in your mind, right? But this one I actually did go back and rewatch, and I think it still very much holds up in a lot of different ways. And like I would go back and watch it again. This isn't one like you're saying. It wouldn't be pulling teeth if somebody's like, "Hey, this is on. Like let's check it out."
And again, to speak to like its time, it was one of the first movies like around like you're saying the later 2000s that just did a good job of displaying like how badass like Iron Man is, where like the CGI doesn't look god awful.
Yeah.
You know, like his ability to fly and do all these things like was cool, was like actually enjoyable to watch, and like it wasn't overly corny like a lot of the movies of that time were. It wasn't like overly violent, or like it was the first, I think, movie to have like a good mix that they have been able to play with over the years. That it was funny, it was serious, but it wasn't really too much of either.
You know what's crazy to me to think about in perspective of, you know, the last 15 years or so of the trajectory of film and like movies like this of it's completely different from what we're talking about, but it reminds me of just how great that Batman trilogy was under Christopher Nolan. Like when you look at movies from 2005, 8, and 12, I think it was, and then like some of the releases like that you're talking about, like it's just so
Ghost Rider,
so
Punisher.
These were getting made at the same time.
Yeah.
Ghost Rider came out in 2009, I think. Like
probably.
What the hell are they doing?
Yeah. Well, it just hadn't had the footing. Like even like maybe some that you could argue are a little better, like Blade. But yeah, anyway, we like you're saying, that could be a whole nother tangent just going off. But
okay, so the next movie we have, and this one I think differs slightly in some ways than Iron Man, is The Incredible Hulk, and a movie that I still have almost no recollection of 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
But
so it plays off that Bruce Banner is fleeing from his former girlfriend's dad, father, like friend-in-law. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's in South America. They're trying to take him down. Obviously, it's is it Everett Ross? I know it's like General Ross, who in the comics is Red Hulk. Is trying to take him down, and he has to come back to America. I think Brainiac was what they were trying to set up for those who know who that is. The guy who like helps him, like the Mr. Blue and Mr. Green, the scientist.
Yeah.
Who gets some of Hulk's blood in his forehead that they never do anything with. That's who that was supposed to be. But they obviously went with Abomination. I think for me, I just grew up really liking Hulk. Like I like that idea of like his rage just like gave him these powers, and like it's especially in the comics, like the angrier he gets, he just like becomes indestructible, and like they kind of allude to that and later in like the Avengers that he tried to commit suicide and basically was able to survive it because of the Hulk. But anyway, so I think that surmises it. Basically he loses the ability of the Hulk, but then they give it to, I forget what the guy's name is, but it's Abomination, and then they end up having that badass fight in the streets of probably New York. And then that's about it, I think, is the plot generally. And then Bruce Banner, his character arc is that he's always on the run. He just can't really ever find peace, with his rage or whatever. So that's what we're looking at as far as the plot. You still don't remember any bit of this, do you?
Yeah, so I while you're describing that, I do have like some visuals that pop up in my mind about that movie. And the funny thing is that like everything you talk about there about the Hulk as his character and his battles with his own I was gonna say his own like mental state, but it's his mental state, but it's the Hulk's mental state, right? It's Banner and Hulk, kind of this duality. And like I love all of that, like the Hulk as a character is
It's
one
great.
of my is great.
Yeah, the disservice to him is bullshit. But
Yeah. And I think that's why, like I brought up in the last series of videos we did, I appreciate the change so much from I was trying to stall for time because I thought the actors' names would come to my head. Give me 2 seconds. From the guy in American History X, Edward Norton.
Yeah,
Edward Norton
Yeah.
to Mark Ruffalo. I love that change because I think he, not necessarily that he's the proper Hulk or like, but I think the movie did a disservice to the character. And I think since Mark Ruffalo's come and taken over that character, I think in every movie he's been in, he's been fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing I dislike is they kind of still continue that struggle with Ruffalo, where I think it would have been fun to just explore this idea of like him going into the rage, you know what I mean? And just like losing control. But
so that's a funny talking point. This isn't exactly about the Incredible Hulk, and maybe we'll save this discussion for another podcast. But as these movies progress, right, they tried to get a little bit more comedic. I think you might agree with that.
Yeah. I think too much at times, but yeah, for sure.
I think that's one of the things where like I did appreciate the humor or the self-deprecation of the Hulk in Infinity War not being able to be the Hulk.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's where you want to see him go Hulk mode and be like really just dive into. And I guess the argument there is in prior movies, it would have been Captain America Civil War, right? He goes full Hulk, and ends up on a different planet and doesn't talk to anybody for 2 years.
Yeah.
So like it makes sense with the storyline, but it's still kind of a weird like progression of that character.
And the thing that's bothered me about it is there's just a downplaying of his like powers, like just pure rage. And you saw it with when he fights Iron Man. Is that in Civil War?
I think so.
Right, when they're in a foreign country and they're trying to go after the twins.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is. No, that's Age of Ultron. It's Age of Ultron. There we go.
Right.
Ha, I got it. I knew. But yeah, that fight scene is incredible. But even then, in that, he loses, and there's kind of a part of me that wishes we would have just seen him like, you know, Spartan kick Tony like into next week, and then just like run off, you know.
Yeah.
But he's just been made to seem really tough but beatable. Yeah. But to me, that's not who the Hulk is. The Hulk is just
very vulnerable.
Yeah,
very
random crazy, random chaos. That's what I was trying to say.
And I think that like with your back knowledge, your knowledge of the comic books in general, and that being kind of like the way that the Hulk is, as like that's his you know, deep down to his core is just that pure rage. The vulnerability, and nothing wrong with showing vulnerability in a character, but to make that like a full chapter in his life of being super vulnerable was weird, kind of strange.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed this movie, so I won't hamper on it too much, and plus that's not what today's podcast is about. So
yeah. Well, and just to add on to that, I guess there is that part of Bruce Banner that hates the Hulk because that he's a scientist. Anybody who's met a scientist knows that they're pretty pacifist, but it's just that duality of lives. So anyway.
Anything else to touch on before we move on from the Hulk? I think if we wanted to break these down in our little, we've talked enough about this movie, I think, but like rewatchability, obviously low in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you have to have an affinity for the Hulk to enjoy this movie. I probably would enjoy this more than you. I do wish the fight scene with Abomination was a little longer, but there are just really cool fight scenes, and I think that's probably one of the biggest redeeming qualities of this movie.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, so moving on to our third movie and our second dose of the man in the iron costume, Iron Man 2, which to me and my recollection of the movie is a good movie. I do and I don't, because it's the only thing that's coming up in my mind is that stupid fire scene on the bridge that's in Iron Man 3.
So in this one, you kind of see a regression of Tony, that he's kind of become more of a douche again. But Obviously, he's in the full swing of Iron Man. The United States or United Nations, whatever, is trying to control him a little bit. He says F you. Justin Hammer's trying to create something that is comparable.
Yes.
This is where we see
Whiplash. What's his name?
Yeah, Ivan
Drago.
Is that
I think so, but that's also just like
no, as you see that, you see the competition with Justin Hammer. Man, why can I not think of Don Cheadle's
Ivan Vanko, and it is Whiplash. I was
no, I know. I was like, is that his Vanko his last name?
Yeah, Ivan Vanko. Yeah, so this movie, still not the whole thing, but pieces are coming back to me. I really like these two co-villains, I guess, if you will. The main one obviously being Whiplash, but Justin Hammer's just like, if you thought Tony Stark was a douche, like wait till we get a load of this guy kind of thing. Like I enjoyed both of those characters a lot.
Whiplash was just kind of underwhelming for me. Again, kind of going back to that, like, there could have been more. They're just better villains for me personally. But overall, like, it did its job. You know, as far as a movie.
I think that if I was going to try to critique this a little bit, I would say that they tried to play into the crazy Russian guy trying to avenge his father a little bit too much, and didn't really give him, like, the fact that he's also a brilliant engineer and scientist, like, just randomly comes up throughout the movie,
and then like jacked as hell.
Like we could have almost used like an introduction of him in another movie to get like a little taste of him or something, you know.
He just wasn't very menacing or threatening, and like and maybe that's part of it too, is like he just isn't really intimidating, and then Justin Hammer is also just kind of like a corporate rival than an actual like villain, you know.
I also don't, if I'm going to critique it, 'cause overall, this isn't one of my favorite movies, but it's okay. It's like, it's rewatchable. It's not a terrible movie. But like the whole, we're going to commercialize Iron Man and have this huge, like, huge patriotic display that backfires towards the end of the movie. Like, that was all not necessarily my favorite. Like, it is what it is.
The final fight scene's cool, and obviously Black Widow gets introduced.
Yes.
So,
overall on this one, like, villain decent, rewatchability decent. It's like everything's kind of checking out to me to be kind of like, it's an okay movie.
Yeah, I think Iron Man 1 displays Iron Man's powers a little better. And then like obviously like backsliding of character development, whether he changes that much in this one, like I don't know. It kind of was a little bit of a retelling, not the strongest film in the series for sure.
Is it this movie, if I'm thinking about it correctly, that we get Jarvis for the first time, or no?
Jarvis is in the first one.
He's in the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but I'm fairly certain that he starts, like, when he builds the suit, Jarvis is a part of that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fine then. I was just going to bring that up as something cool, but if that was in the first movie, then more props to that.
Which I love that they started with Paul Bettany's voice and then he actually became Vision. I think that's so cool.
I think it's great for multiple reasons, because one, like, there's that cohesion, right? But also Paul Bettany is just a fantastic actor. And I love Paul Bettany.
Yeah. You just finished WandaVision too. So.
I just finished WandaVision, and I was going to bring that up as like the fact that not only do we get to see him as Vision in, you know, subsequent movies after Iron Man 2, but like we get Vision as like a main character, and I think Paul Bettany displays that so well. And I think I was just going to go off on a tangent about WandaVision. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, future.
I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this one.
Yeah. I want to give this film a little bit more hate, but I think we should move on and just say it's okay. It's nothing to write home about.
This channel's not about hate. This channel is about spreading the good gospel of Marvel. The good gospel of Stan Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next one. And I literally just got done saying that we weren't going to spread any hate. and I'm gonna try not to do so. But this next movie, the first Thor, is one of my least favorite, and I think you could say objectively one of the worst of the Marvel franchise.
Yeah, it has its redeeming qualities. Like, obviously, Tom Hiddleston like knocks it out of the park, and Chris Hemsworth is a fantastic Thor. Like, it has like good elements to it. The Warriors 3 was a weird addition.
I think if you were to split this movie into two parts, or let's just say for the sake of conversation, split this movie into two parts, I think the first half gets off really well. But like, I'm specifically thinking about the fight scene in the little Mexican town, and like everything kind of surrounding like that, with you're talking about the Warriors 3 coming in and like all of
them
that,
fighting Sentry and at the end of the movie.
Yeah, that all seemed very like last minute, we need to finish this story.
Yeah, we need a boss for him to finish. Yeah.
Which was not low key, but it was low key, and like none of it made sense. Like, if we were to have a full on like Loki versus, like, this is your first, I mean, it kind of is in a way, but this is your first taste of like Loki and Thor aren't always on the same page and they're going after different things.
Yeah.
But it was literally like Loki versus Thor. I think that would have been sick.
Yeah, I agreed.
But we got this, and I don't think it was the right way to do it.
Especially, they end up doing a lot better job of like showing Loki's powers and abilities, which are quite menacing. And like, even Thor in this movie, his powers are a lot better displayed in the Avengers and then eventually Thor Ragnarok. Obviously, I mean, time and
it is kind of funny. It is kind of funny that like, if you think about Thor in the context of this movie, he's very much in the stage of like, I'm just the big bro that beats people up, like
which again is kind of like Thor, right? Is this kind of, at least as far as from what I understand comics, I don't know, it's just this like overpowered, cocky dude, but and rightfully so, he is. I mean, he's a god.
Not in Endgame.
Oh, the axe, the Stormbreaker is so cool. Anyway, what else should we talk about this movie? Loki's great, but Sentry's a terrible last villain. Natalie Portman and Kat Dennings and Skarsgård.
That's one thing I will say about this, is that that aspect of it, or that angle of the scientists, the astrophysicists trying to kind of do their thing, I did really like that, and I love that trio, that trio of who you just mentioned. So like, if you want to say what's the big redeeming quality about this movie, casting was really great. Casting and the fact that like, when you make the wrong decision with casting with this many movies, it can go horribly wrong, right? But I think they did a great job at picking characters who would stay around, and like, even getting a somewhat large cameo again from Kat Dennings in WandaVision. Like, I think that's something that like they set up to have in the future really, really well.
Yeah, and like you're saying, like, they're really lucky to have people want to come back and continue to work and do these movies that I think is really fun. Probably speaks to Marvel and Kevin Feige and what they've tried to create. But yeah, the storytelling in this movie in particular just kind of fell flat.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It tried to be kind of this sappy, a little bit like father-son struggle of like Thor trying to redeem, and it just kind of came out cheesy. Yeah.
By the way, if you hear anybody dying in the background, that's just my dog like hacking up some. He's a very old dog.
He's just living his best life, man.
He is living his best life, laying on the couch behind us. I think that's all I have to say about this one. If we were to kind of give our other points about it, like rewatchability and all that kind of stuff, I would say overall, like similarly to Iron Man 2, worth a watch if you haven't seen them, but it's not something I think you'll come back to again and again.
It's not one I would watch. It's not one I go back and watch individually.
No. Okay, cool. Let's move on to our penultimate movie in this series, and that is Captain America: The First Avenger. Because if we're going chronologically, timeline-wise,
I think
first
so.
One.
Yeah. I think so. We'll say yeah.
I'm almost 100% positive.
Okay. If you've recently looked at it, then I won't doubt your knowledge.
We were trying to break this down for young Carlton, who hadn't seen any of these movies before she met me, and so we were doing a rewatch, and she was like, I don't know what any of these are. So we were trying to kind of, we went to the route of like, should we watch it chronologically? Should we watch it timelines wise? So I'm pretty confident, but and it's in the name, so let's give them that.
Yeah. Also, as a side note, that there's like a proud friend moment in that, because before Dalton and I really became friends, you hadn't really seen any of them, or maybe like
no, I hadn't seen any of them, but I don't know if this says more about me as a weird person. I'd only seen like 10 movies in my life before I turned like 24, so it is what it is. But
anyway, I was gonna make a joke there. One of them was My Covered Wagon, right? It was sorry.
Great.
Anyway, no, it's just kind of cool to see you and Carly get into them and really enjoy them and stuff. And it's funny to have you introduced, because I set up like this program that we like got together once a week and had like a friend.
He drilled it into me whether I wanted it to happen or not.
Yeah.
So.
And there's like some of them that Dalton was like, I just don't want to watch this. It's going to be so bad. And I was like, you just have to push through it. Like it's just what you have to do. So I'm very excited
Eternals.
that you enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we still go see movies today if you didn't
but
know.
Really, please go see Eternals. It's great. So Captain America, this is really funny to me, because speaking on kind of our dynamic of watching these movies together, Captain America, when I first started watching the Marvel movies, was hands down my favorite character. And I think that to some degree, going back and rewatching these, up until a certain point, I can't really pick it out right now off the top of my head, but I think the first like 4 or 5 movies, and let's maybe say up until Captain America Civil War, let's just put that down as like a baseline. Up until that, I think Captain America was my favorite / like one of the most likable characters that there could ever be.
That's so interesting, because as you're saying that, in my mind, I hated Captain America. Funny. I was like, what is his powers? He's an exceptional leader with a frisbee. I think
that's why I liked it, and that's why maybe you don't, because like coming from a perspective of not ever reading comic books, not really taking a strong interest in superhero movies, I like to just see badass people, and like that's kind of like coming from more of a world of like the weightlifting, the MMA, like that was kind of my introduction to this kind of stuff. Like I loved the idea of this dude just being like, I'm jacked, I'm strong, I've got a frisbee, and I can do it. Your ass.
Yeah. And they did a phenomenal job of developing his character of being just a good man, just somebody who's always trying to do the right thing. And I will say, I mean, no spoilers for where this podcast is going, but I did change my tune once Winter Soldier came. Part of it. That movie is just excellent. Like that movie, even just as far as like action movies, which I know people like dog on or whatever, but like that movie is just phenomenal. So anyway, to get back to talking about this first one, I hated on this movie. Now that I've watched through the phases, I probably couldn't even give it a number, too many probably, but this movie is better than Thor, and originally I thought that they were like Captain America was worse, and then I was like, okay, they're about the same, and then I was like, okay, Captain America the First Avenger is for sure better than Thor.
So I think that I'm going to be a little bit bold here and say this is the best movie out of phase 1.
Oh, really?
If you want to put into the little caveat of like what was the most significant movie, sure, you can say Iron Man. But I think as movies go, I think this is the best one.
I would say probably there's 6 movies. Yep. I would say the top 3 without question are Iron Man, Avengers, and Captain America. Iron Man 2 would probably be 4, and then Hulk 5, and then Thor 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It is definitely like in the higher of the 6 movies. I think just as far as significance, Avengers just got so many people into and did something of we had never seen so many superheroes, and like actually creating a universe was exceptional. But
Yeah.
as far as a standalone, personally, I would say Iron Man over Captain America, but I respect your opinion.
I think that in all walks of life, if we were to go Iron Man versus Captain America, I think we're always going to be on one side and one on the other.
Okay, so then for Civil War, were you Cap or Iron Man?
100% Cap. Up into the point of it getting a little bit too whiny and a little bit too like, I just want to do what I want to do. But even going back and rewatching that recently, and so, having like 3 or 4 years between seeing the movie, I was still very much on Captain America's side for most of it.
That's fun. Yeah, 100% Iron Man.
Yeah.
100%. So I guess that I didn't know that. That's funny. Yeah, 1,000% Iron Man.
I think that, and this obviously ends up being essentially the plot to, or at least a subplot to a lot of the movies that Iron Stark. This isn't Game of Thrones. That Iron Man's in is his overall fear of essentially his own past and like trying to, like you mentioned when we were talking about the first movie, trying to like make up and recount for the things that he's done in his life. I think is just something that like that to me seems like just like I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it's, and not from a storyline wise, I think it makes perfect sense, but I think it's just like, why are you so worked up about the past, dude?
And it's funny because you saying that is like, to me, that makes him super relatable of like, just feeling like, I mean, not to make this a mental health podcast or whatever, but like feeling that past regret and that like anxiety about the future, I think for me was just relatable of like wanting to have these protections and like wanting to fight off the unknown. And like you're saying, and with that, just like feeling guilt of like contributing to that too.
And I'm not by any means saying that this is not something I believe in like everyday life or like my actual personal opinions.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about strictly in a movie context, I think that, I'm on Captain America's side.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I even wanted to say like, even though Tony's wrong, I'm still on his side. Yeah. And like, I don't know. In like the real world, I guess like there are good points to both, but yeah, for me, just as a character, it was Iron Man all the way.
I always look at it kind of like the way that watching the movie, I kind of like drew a line in the sand of like, imagine that was Black Panther. I think that like the way that Black Panther and they handle things in Wakanda and like their whole culture of like, we're here to protect people, so right? Good. Yeah. I feel like if somebody was come in and say like, I mean, I guess it kind of does happen in the movie to some degree, right? But like if people would come in and try to regulate them, like you're not getting the best out of them.
Yeah.
Anyways, we gone way too deep on a movie that's not even included.
So let's actually like talk about
America. Great movie. One of the and maybe you'll disagree, but one of the best hero genocides. Just like I really enjoy this guy just being like a
good person,
a stepped on dude from Brooklyn who wants a better life, and through a weird way of going about it ends up kind of,
once it's fleshed out, I'll agree, but the actual movie, I'm having a hard time with it here of the best origin, but that might be a future tier list anyway, is like going through and doing random ones, but his character does become a lot better, but anyway, yeah. So let's keep talking about this. Red Skull, and kind of Arnim Zemo, if you want to put him in there a little bit, but what are your thoughts about them as far as villains go for this movie?
I think I get it. It's not one of my favorites, but like I don't really have any criticisms. I think Red Skull makes a good villain. I think that whole idea of like the Hydra Revolution and stuff like that all makes perfect sense, and I think they do a really good job of setting that up throughout the movie. I think that if I was to have one criticism about it, that I kind of like, I feel like there could have been a lot more done to make you scared of Hydra, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like they're just kind of introduced as this like underground power that's going to take over the world, but I don't think you ever really get scared of like Hydra. Like, if Hydra's reign over the world happens, like, you never really get that inherent fear that I think they could have built on a little bit more.
Yeah, and a problem with like a lot of the Marvel Cinematic villains is that they just are beatable, right?
Yeah.
They only have one movie, or 2 hours roughly, give or take, and that's kind of been fun with the TV series to have a little bit more fleshing out of a villain and what their background is and motivation and all that. But Red Skull is just kind of a knockoff Hitler who's like trying to have world domination and stuff, so he's fine. I mean, for the time too, especially Captain America, originally starting during World War I and II, I think is when those types of comics got big. Makes sense, and it's true to him as a character. So
what's really interesting, if you look at phase 1 as a whole compared to subsequent movies and phases, they relied a lot on just like the actual history of the world for these, like, and I guess that comes down to Stan Lee's writing, right? But you really get a feel for like, this is the past, and maybe you could say this is the present, this is the future, and subsequent phases, right? But the past that is very reliant on like past tropes in this first phase. But before we move on, just I would do want to say rewatchability is very high on this for me. We've kind of gone through all the other bullet points, but I think 2 thumbs up for me on this one. Like we said when we first started talking about this one, I think this is definitely in the top 2 to 3 of phase 1, like bar none.
Yeah, for sure, top 3.
We'll fight about this later.
We're gonna argue, but
we have 4 phases to go through. We'll probably end up.
The final point that I was gonna make is we've been spoiled with so many great movies that just kind of looking back, like for me personally, I'm probably only gonna hit up maybe, like, if I'm watching them out of order, maybe Avengers, Iron Man. And then maybe Hulk, and then maybe if I'm in a weird mood, then Thor, Captain America. I'm probably not gonna watch Iron Man 2.
The thing is with phase 1, all of these movies aren't movies that like I really want to go back and watch all that much compared to the rest of the universe.
Which I think is a perfect segue for us to talk about the Avengers and how many times everyone has seen that movie.
Seriously. Okay. Yeah, so the Avengers is an interesting one to me because, like you brought up a little bit earlier in this conversation, it was like the first one to like really open the world to the world of Marvel and superheroes and the universe, right? It was the first one for the people who are maybe just casual watchers or observers of this space to be like, what's going on here? I want to check this out.
Unlike was it you or somebody was telling me a story of they were like going in to see Endgame or
I think that was
Infinity
Carly.
War.
Yeah.
And they were like, do I need to know anything before I go see this?
So for all you Marvel fans, I probably committed the cardinal sin of I took my girlfriend for the first Marvel movie she had ever seen to watch Endgame. And then she was just so confused for the first 30 minutes, and we had to describe. I went with my little brother as well. And when Black Widow popped up on the screen at some point, she looks over at me and asks, "Is that Wonder Woman?" And my 6-year-old, 7-year-old little brother at the time just looks at her. He's like, "That's Black Widow, you idiot! How do you not know this?" So my bad there. But anyways,
I think there was just so much hype that a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'll just go check out Infinity War and Endgame." It's like, you just don't do that. Like, you got to know a lot. Yeah.
So you're saying you shouldn't go watch the second Mockingjay and then just try to build back on that?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's kind of funny, just how I am of I have to start the story from the beginning. It's really hard to go out of turn. But I just shouted in your mic. Hopefully that you're not, having ears on fire later. Okay. So overall thoughts. This is a great movie. It does a wonderful job of incorporating multiple superheroes, multiple storylines in the course of 2.5 hours.
Well, give the listeners a quick plot for them and for them only.
Yeah. So it was alluded to with Captain America, right? That they had the Tesseract, which they have now found after finding Captain America. They start testing on it. Loki shows up. He wants it. He has the scepter. I guess unbeknownst to him, he has 2 Infinity Stones. And then it's Loki trying to take over the world with the Chitauri warriors. And then kind of just like building up to that point of Loki trying to take over the world, and then assembling the Avengers of going after Hulk and having Thor chase down. The fight scene between Thor, Cap, and Iron Man in the forest is great. Great comedy relief. Just kind of definitely more of just like a summer popcorn. Put it on. You don't have to be super invested, and just kind of watch it and enjoy.
Fast and Furious 7.
I do not like those movies.
Can you imagine where we'd be in our lives if we decided to get into that universe instead of this universe?
Would I be bald? And
I don't know if you'd be bald because you hate yourself or because genetically you would just be inferior. I don't know. I'm sorry, that's probably rude, but I hate those movies. Anyways,
yeah. Anyway,
I was gonna do 10 minutes on Fast and Furious.
I don't think we need the monologue about the quality of Vin Diesel's acting abilities.
No, he's the pacifier. That's all we need to know. But so I think that this movie is. You say it's in the top 3 of this phase, and I'm not going to necessarily fight you on that because the other 3 suck. But I this is one that like I don't think it has the rewatchability in my opinion as I would say Iron Man and Captain America do.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, like I just always am thinking about like its impact and like where we're at today because of that movie.
Yeah.
But as far as like overall like character development, which I think you and I both really enjoy. I mean, there's not really any character development. It's just kind of an action movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because the other Avengers movies do have more character development, but this is just putting together a team.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like the icing on the cake of the first phase of like anybody who's paid attention this long, like we'll just give you a banger kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and again, just like being able to have the money and the ability and the story writing to put something together that just looked cool, right? Of like, and this is why I gush over something like Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, of that like transferal of like a comic book movie. And I think this was the first time that they were able to do that, and it was just such an exciting thing. So
yeah, I
don't know why I just mimicked you, but that's
what
I did.
This feels kind of weird. I feel like we're about to give you a TED talk or a I feel like I'm going to introduce some kind of pyramid scheme to you guys, but I think we've outlined that well. I don't have any other really thoughts about Avengers. Again, with all of these, I would say I think with every single Marvel movie I've watched other than Eternals is worth at least one watch.
I watched that for a 3rd time now, and
you've come to my side.
No, but it has lost some of its charm after the 3rd one. But I don't know what it was, but it was good for me. But
I saw a trailer recently that was Angelina Jolie just punching people, and I was like, this makes me hate the movie even more. Like, that's supposed to make me want to go watch the movie? Angelina Jolie punching people? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's different for everybody, but
phase 4, we'll get there.
Yeah, the one thing I will add to this is that Loki was great in Thor, and I think it just built on this. Like, he was phenomenal and kind of built him as a staple for the rest of the universe. And obviously at the end of this, we get our first glimpse of Thanos, which becomes a huge building, for people to look for key little things of, where are the Infinity Stones and like what's going on and blah, blah, blah. But just a fun movie, and definitely like it's definitely worth a watch for sure.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
For me, decent rewatchability.
Yeah, I would say decent rewatchability. I think if this is in kind of that category of if you're maybe in a hotel and this is on TBS or something like that and you have nothing else to watch, like, yeah.
You could jump in wherever and it doesn't really matter.
Nah.
Yeah.
But I think which is kind of like we touched on a little bit ago. I think it's kind of my feelings about most of phase 1.
Yeah.
I think if you were to take phase 1, put it in a box, tie a little bow on it, it'd be say good, important for the rest of the universe, but kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And especially like I keep, harping on this, but I've just watched those movies so many times, whether it being showing friends or for my own enjoyment or whatever. It'll probably be a little bit before I go back and watch these 6 movies again. So
yeah, I agree. I'm right there with you. We were, like I mentioned, we had a little COVID binge, and I think we started with a little bit of Iron Man and then just moved right on to phase 2 because we were like,
yeah,
A, we kind of still remember most of these movies, and B, it's like you've seen them. Like,
yeah. They're just better movies now that we have, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Plus, we hadn't seen WandaVision yet, so we hopped on that train. And I will tell anybody who is reluctant to go ahead and just do it, and do it before we put out Phase 4's episode, because we will be talking about that in depth.
Yes.
But speaking of talking about things in depth, that is it for us today, talking about Marvel Phase 1 in depth. Thank you, Stephen, for coming to my TED Talk, and we'll be back for another episode.
Is our next episode going to be NPR? Do I need to wear a black turtleneck and
No,
straight black coffee?
No. So my school/day job is very NPR, and I would like to avoid that as much as possible. So please, let's come with some energy. Let's come with some excitement.
Yeah. Hopefully I wasn't Stonewall Jackson you the whole time with my face. Hopefully I had a little bit more expression.
I remember Obadiah making an appearance, but I don't remember Stonewall Jackson making an appearance.
Okay.
I remember Civil War heroes ever. That's it for this one.
That's phase 2.
They're gonna do full circle. We're gonna go back to Captain America, but it's gonna be Civil War. Yeah. Okay. Thanks,
cool.
guys.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Do all the things you got to do to subscribe, keep up, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we will be back with another episode. Phase 2, we're going to be doing these in phases, obviously, to keep this consistent. A video accompanying each one of these with our tier list rankings of these movies will also go up on the YouTube channel in due time. And that's all I got to say. Peace out, guys.
See you later.
Take care. Enjoy life. Peace.